Parashat Tetzaveh. In this week's parasha, the Torah tells us that on the Choshen there were 12 stones. On these 12 stones were unique and different from one another, and they each had a different name. The name of the stone of Binyamin was Yashveh. The Midrash tells us that we should really split this word Yashveh to two parts. Yesh Peh, there is a mouth. Rabbi Chaim explains to us in length that Binyamin had a tremendous struggle. For a few years, he had an inner battle. Should he tell his father that Yosef was sold by the Shvatim? The father would be very upset. Or should he take away the existing pain, the pain that he sees so clearly in his own eyes, by telling him Yosef is alive? He contemplated back and forth, should I say or should I not? Finally, he decided that the pain that Yaakov would experience by knowing that the brothers sold Yosef was far greater, so he remained quiet. Yesh peh v'shotek. The question is, we should say, en peh, he remained silent. He kept quiet. Ein peh, he has no words to say. I think this could be understood, taking this down to our life. All of us have some sort of relationship, may it be a husband and wife, partners, or a relationship between co-workers, whatever it might be, neighbors. All these things, sometimes we don't always agree. Sometimes we come to arguments. The argument could carry on, and sometimes we find ourselves getting heated up and upset. Then we get to a point where so angry we have this word which could really knock this person out of the park. This word might change the quality of our relationship. Let's take our husband and wife, the spouse, and might shake the relationship to the foundation. And we have to choose to keep quiet. Yesh peh, you have something to say. Aval shotek, you remain quiet. We all are familiar with the Chazal, which teach us hane'elavim ve'enam olvim, those that get embarrassed by somebody else and they don't make mockery out of the person that's embarrassing them. Shom'im cherpatam ve'enam ashivim, they hear their disgrace and they remain quiet. Chazal go on and tell us that they will be zochet to have a tremendous chelik in Olam Haba and also in this world. We also know kol habolem piv be'et riv, any person that remains quiet at time of a fight and argument and doesn't answer back, he will be zochel le'or haganuz, to the hidden light. For some reason, these words of Chazal don't really play out in our day-to-day life, and we can't bring ourselves to remember what Chazal are teaching us. This is something that has to be studied and thought about every single day in order for a person to tap into this world of Or HaGanuz. But until then, the Or, this light, is very far from us. And therefore, it doesn't affect our life. So let's think about some things practical things that could talk to our logic, because when a person's angry and upset, he needs to talk to his logic and say, this is not worth it. There's a famous story about a farmer and a merchant. The farmer brings his produce from his farm on a wagon. He tells the merchant, I have a whole wagon full of produce, and I'd like to sell it to you. The merchant says, how much does it cost? He says, $10 a bag. He says, how many bags do you have? He says, I'm clueless. The merchant says, listen, this is what we're going to do. I'll take this bag, every bag I take and put inside my storage house, I'll place a coin, a 25-cent coin, which will resemble the $10. In the end, we'll count up the coins and we'll make the math. Fine. While the merchant was unloading and putting inside placing it inside the warehouse, the farmer was eyeing the coins and said, I gotta get my hands on those coins. Look at those coins. And every time the merchant went inside to place the bags inside the storage house, he takes a coin, sneaks it in, making sure that the merchant doesn't see. The merchant saw this. He saw it in the corner of his eye and he smirked. This farmer is a foolish man. He has just what to lose. This is the way it is when we argue and we come to, it's okay to argue, but when it comes to insulting somebody else, putting somebody else down, we just tend to lose. This is one thing that we could keep in mind in a general aspect when we come to arguments. Here are a few things that we could keep in mind. I'm going to list a few things that we could keep in mind which are practical, that could guide us in our day-to-day life. A person argues because his self-pride was hurt, or he's standing for his self-pride. Let's keep in mind that arguing with somebody else is the first and foremost thing that takes our self-pride away. There's nothing more humbling when a person hears his spouse saying, you're right, you're right. Number 2, say what's on your mind. Say what you're feeling. Say it correctly in the right way, but mainly say it at the right time. A person has to find the right time to say these words. If you're arguing and you're convinced in your words and you see that you're losing yourself, you're losing your mind, stop yourself and tell the person you're arguing with, let's hold this conversation for a different time. I think this is getting out of hand. Another thing that we could keep in mind is if you're coming to, let's say you have something, a strong comment to tell somebody else, you have words of rebuke or criticism, it should be done once in a blue moon. It shouldn't be done on a daily basis. When you have something to criticize or rebuke, keep it straight to the point. Don't lengthen your words on that point. If you're giving criticism to somebody else, start with words of praise. Tell him, notify the person you're on his side. You're not against him. You're not fighting with him. You just want to inform him something that has to be fixed. Another idea we have to keep in mind is if you're telling somebody to fix something, you should think of something to tell him how to fix the problem. Don't just tell him the problem. In advance, you should plan how and what you're going to say. This is something that we have to keep in mind, but mostly, the most important thing is don't rebuke. This is something many mechanchim swore by. For 2 weeks, take 2 weeks of not saying a thing to your kids, any criticism, and instead, in place, words of praise. You'll see tremendous change in your house, and this will push you to go further. This just gives us another perk. If a person learns to control his mouth, then he could keep the halacha that teaches us that during Shnayim Yomi, he should not speak. Shabbat Shalom.